Good evening and welcome to yet another episode of the program Service to Humanity, your window into the activities of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, and her agencies as it carries out its mandate of fighting poverty and coordinating the nation's response to humanitarian issues. I am Habibu Zakzok, your anchor on the program, urging you to stay tuned. Tonight, we continue with our review to mark the ministry's third year in office. And in this episode, we shall look at some key events organized to launch policy documents that guide the actions and interventions of the ministry as it goes about its coordination of humanitarian activities. Highlights include the launch of its 5-year strategic framework, the public presentation of an IDP policy, amongst other events. While we do that, we shall also bring you some recent happenings in the ministry. Our focus this evening will be on a trip to Delta by our crew to capture the enumeration of GEEP beneficiaries. These and other news when the program starts fully after this timeout. Don't go away.
I tell you, anytime we're not producing, the fish farmers suffer. The people we engage suffer. The people we feed, that we give our fish heads to, they feel it. I'll only beg the government to continue with this and make it run more.
We used to have children crying, parents will be chasing them to come to school, and they will be at the gate, they will be crying, they will hold on to the plate, they will not want to come into the gate.
When they are not giving it for some, the attendance was very low.
Now the children are always fit and healthy because of the food they eat.
We make them attend class every day.
I eat rice, bread, and carrots.
I want to use this opportunity to thank the federal government for the feeding program.
We shall begin with the management diary, where we bring you news from the ministry and her agencies. FEC approves 43.6 billion naira for Northeast Road projects, just as Minister calls for better execution of the Humanitarian Ministry's mandate. Stay tuned for details.
The Federal Executive Council, FEC, has approved the sum of 43.6 billion naira for the construction and reconstruction of roads in Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Gombe, and Bauchi states. This was revealed by the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk, when she briefed State House correspondents at the end of the council meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday, 24th of August 2022. She stated that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, on behalf of the Northeast Development Commission, presented 4 memos to the Council in respect of road reconstruction for 5 states of the Northeast region, namely Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Gombe, and Bauchi. The minister further explained that the project would be carried out on 22.5 kilometers Ngom-Koshebe and Ngom-Zabarmari, Gongulong-Kajari roads in Borno, 54 kilometers Mutai Ngalda road in Yobe, 53 kilometers Gombe-Abadu-Kurfi road in Gombe and Bauchi state, and 32 kilometers Zabuna-Garkita road in Adamawa state. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk has called for better actualization of the ministry's mandates. The minister stated this at the opening of a 2-day management retreat for the Humanitarian Ministry's workers and agencies with the theme, Strengthening Social Inclusion for Improved Living Standard of Nigerians. The event held at the NAF Conference Center in Abuja. Among those in attendance were the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Dr. Nasser Sanu Gwarzo, Director of Planning, Research and Statistics of the Ministry, Mr. Ralph Orai Luno, representatives of the National Emergency Management Agency, National Commission for Refugees, Migrant and Internally Displaced Persons, Commission for Persons with Disabilities, and the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals. The minister, in her keynote address, noted that lives and well-being of numerous Nigerians have been negatively impacted by natural disasters and man-made crises across the nation, necessitating the ministry's introspection in order to strengthen the organizational structure of the ministry for better service delivery. Commending the leadership of the various agencies, departments and units of the ministry, Farouk encouraged them to demonstrate serious commitment to the retreat and come up with a communique that will recommend ways of strengthening the organizational structure and service delivery of the ministry.
Good to have you back on the program Service to Humanity. We shall take a report from Uwe local government area of Delta State, where our crew met with some officials and intended beneficiaries of the GEEP 2.0 program. This was during the recent enumeration exercise organized to digitize applicants for the loan for seamless disbursements. Let's see how this particular exercise went.
Uwe is one of the 25 local government areas that make up Delta State, a center of civilization for the Urhobo people. Uwe local government area is headquartered in Efurun town.
What we are doing now, we are enumerating you now.
Just like in other parts of the country, business owners and farmers interested in the government enterprise and empowerment program GEEP 2.0 were enumerated and their biodata captured. As part of the effort of the ministry and the National Orientation Agency to prepare the beneficiaries for the loan disbursement as well as entrepreneurship, officials responded to questions from them. Blessing Oyem, the coordinator of the enumeration exercise, and Popo Esosa, program officer for Uwe local government area, both from the National Orientation Agency, further explained the GEEP program.
It's a program to empower the people to improve their businesses, okay? The skilled ones and the ones that are into trades, petty trades. We have more of women.
The GEEP program is a program that I see will help a lot of people, most especially these small-scale entrepreneurs.
Some of the intended beneficiaries of GEEP 2.0 bear their minds on the program and how they intend to use the funds to improve their businesses. Patience Isenakife, a trader, shares with us how she heard about the GEEP program, her thoughts on the enumeration exercise and how the loan would benefit her.
The screening process was very okay. It's not by you know somebody, they do it for you. No, you come, you write your names, you be on queue, they ask you your BVM, your names, and your local government. And that's how you fill your form. And when you are done, you go until the day they want to come again. 2000 is going to help me in a very long way, in a sense that there's a way of using a business, and I'm saving out of that money. I will still gain more money from that 50,000.
Maria Akuya, who is also a trader, shares her plans for the loan as she hopes the government would continue to repeat the gesture when beneficiaries repay the loans.
As I call so now, they still do away for me. And they give me that money, I see pay quick. Then they go see help me again. Because if you say give message, if you go away and you go double for the PK again, and the government they do well.
Doris Alpha, a trader, shares how the loan would impact on her business as she pleads with the government to increase the amount.
It will help me many ways because nothing is too small. It will help me to bruise it up more than as it is before. I am pleading that they will increase it after this payment.
One of the strategic pillars of the humanitarian ministry is strengthening policies and institutional frameworks. To this end, the ministry, in its 3 years journey of delivering service to humanity, has developed, revised, and worked with other agencies to formulate policies and plans that seek to help the poor and vulnerable in the nation. From its 5-year strategic plan to the IDP policy, and then to formulating a roadmap to implementing these policies, the ministry has been hard at work to create policy documents that will shape how things are done in the coordination of a response to the humanitarian crisis. In our next segment, and to commemorate the ministry's 3 years in office, we shall see some of these policies as we review events where they were presented to the public. Do stay tuned.
When the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was established, it was given 7 key mandates by the President. 3 of these mandates border on policy formulation in recognition of the need to build institutional frameworks. These mandates are to formulate and implement social policies for improved living standard for the elderly, the vulnerable, and socially disadvantaged persons. Formulate policy on all activities relating to the disaster management in Nigeria and coordinate the plans and programs for efficient and effective response to disaster at national level, and to formulate and coordinate implementation of social development policies and programs in collaboration with other MDAs.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today I'm also launching to the world the National Policy on Internal Displaced Persons.
Towards this end, the ministry in its 3 years of existence has recorded successes along the lines of policy formation. Some of the policies from the ministry include National Policy on Aging, a policy that has given birth to what is known today as the Senior Citizens Center. National Migration Policy, established to tackle issues concerning migration. National Disability Policy, established to handle matters that concerns persons living with disability. National Disaster Risk Management Policy, awaiting approval by the Federal Executive Council. National Social Protection Policy, intended to encapsulate all social issues in Nigeria, and National Policy for Internally Displaced Persons. Earlier this year, 2022, the ministry, in a milestone event, launched its 5-year strategic roadmap designed to help it achieve its mandate of managing disasters, implementing social development, and developing as well as providing durable solutions to humanitarian issues in the country. The roadmap, built on 7 strategic pillars, was unveiled as the guiding document for how the ministry will go about the theme of mapping out a life of dignity for all Nigerians. Special guest of honor at the launch, Vice President Yemi Oshibanjo, was represented by the Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Mr. Diola Ibrahim Rahman, expressed delight at the launch, which he describes as a milestone in the life of a strategic ministry in the Buhari administration.
In the Northeast, the process of resettling displaced persons and refugees in their communities has already started. This represents the first step in the process of turning the tide of events in that region in the direction of peace and recovery. There is, of course, much work that remains to be done. This is why the strategic roadmap that has been formulated by the ministry is so important.
Chief host of the event and Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, in her address, explained that the roadmap was developed in collaboration with agencies implementing its mandates and introduces mechanisms that will be deployed to ensure results delivery.
The roadmap we are launching today is the end product of the cohesive analysis of the valuable insights, feedback, and inputs received from the ministry's departments and agencies. This strategic roadmap is aptly themed, mapping out a life of dignity for all. In line with the ministry's onerous task of effectively discharging our responsibilities that are pivotal to the economy of the nation and the well-being of the citizenry.
The minister said the full implementation of the roadmap will not only consolidate the priority areas of the federal government, it will also improve lives of the vulnerable and restore dignity. She assured Nigerians that the ministry remains committed to actualizing the objectives of the roadmap. Closely related to this is the formal launch of the National Policy on Internally Displaced Persons (IDP) the month of March 2022. The policy document, approved by the Federal Executive Council in September 2021, was launched during the ministry's Humanitarian Open House themed Coordinating for Durable Humanitarian Solutions: The Journey So Far. In her keynote address, the minister stated that new realities and emerging trends in the humanitarian space in Nigeria were taken into cognizance before developing and adopting the policy.
This policy therefore draws extensively on the guidance of international and national frameworks on the prevention of internal displacement, as well as those on protection and assistance of internally displaced persons. The Kampala Convention, the UN Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement, and the fair minimum standards for humanitarian assistance have significantly defined the direction of this policy. This policy envisions an equitable and stable Nigerian society that is proactive and responsive to situations that could lead to internal displacement, where the right to life of dignity is guaranteed for all internally displaced persons, and where adequate measures and durable solutions exist to prevent and mitigate the impact of internal displacement on vulnerable populations.
The minister also assured that plans were ongoing to domesticate the African Union Kampala Convention.
I wish to formally announce that we have commenced the stand-alone process of domesticating the African Union Kampala Convention. The relevant stakeholders are hereby charged to come up with the draft bill for onward presentation to the Federal Executive Council for approval and subsequent transmission to the National Assembly for necessary legislative actions.
Earlier, a brief on policy formation and coordination of the Humanitarian Ministry was given by Director, Planning, Research and Statistics, Raphael Obi Orelunu, where he stated that the mainstream ministries are established with special focus on policy formulation and implementation, as well as supervision of such policies and implementation by agencies of the ministry.
The case of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development has not been different, because from inception, the ministry has undertaken its responsibilities through the formulation of various policies.
Part of the activities for that day saw the minister presenting the ministry's information brochure and the National Social Investment Program (NSIP) information brochure to the public. The brochure is a book containing all information on the ministry, its departments, programs, and agencies. In the same vein, a pictorial compendium chronicling the programs, activities, and achievements of the ministry were also unveiled. As a follow-up to the policy launch, the National Humanitarian Coordination Technical Working Group, at its 5th meeting, deliberated on a national action plan for the implementation of the IDP policy.
The ministry has been working assiduously with partners to develop policies and programs.
Chairman of the meeting, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Hajiya Sadiya Umar Faruk, was represented by Permanent Secretary Nasir Sanugwarzo, said that the meeting's goal was to articulate and design an implementable implementation strategy for the IDP policy. He was represented by the Director of Humanitarian Affairs, Alhaji Ali Grema.
Considering the urgent need to activate a process of closing the gap in coordination of management of IDPs, this fifth meeting will focus primarily on update on national policy on internally displaced persons after its approval by the Federal Executive Council on the 1st of September 2021. And the next step to be taken to drive its implementation.
He charged stakeholders to put their heads together to come up with a veritable national action plan for the implementation of the IDP policy. In their various goodwill messages, stakeholders pledged support towards the actualization of the IDP policy.
The House of Representatives will continue to partner with all relevant organizations and the ministries to ensure that the success of this policy is achieved.
And what you would like to, in line with this mandate, assure the Federal Ministry of its commitment to provide the necessary support to ensure the mandate of the Ministry is achieved.
Charles Anielo, Deputy Director, Humanitarian Affairs, speaking in an interview, explained the advantages of the IDP policy.
IDP policy is created just for 2 or 3 specific issues. The core of them is to ensure coordinated approach in delivering humanitarian assistance to IDPs, and then also to ensure that there is no duplications and of efforts by all actors working on issues of humanitarian delivery.
Another landmark event organized by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was a technical review of the National Risk Management Policy. The event, which took place in Abuja, was organized in collaboration with key stakeholders in the month of May. The policy addresses new and developing concerns in disaster management, as well as actively responds to recurring disasters such as flooding, fire outbreaks, industrial and fuel explosions, diseases, violence and communal disputes across Nigeria. Director, Disaster Risk Management of the Humanitarian Ministry, Alhaji Ali Grema, gave a brief history of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy.
The National Disaster Risk Management Policy was developed in July 2019 by NEMA in collaboration with UNDP and other critical stakeholders. At the time, the ministry was not established. Since the establishment of the ministry, it became pertinent to the ministry to conduct a review of the existing policy to better understanding the scope of the coverage of the policy. With the new emerging issues from the field and academia, the capacity and implementations of the disaster management stakeholders make input and further operationalize the policy in relation to its program and intervention for its persons of concerns, which include the vulnerable poor, persons with special needs, victims of trafficking, internally displaced persons, refugees, elderly, unemployed, and youth.
With its various policies outlining a roadmap for the actualization of government's intentions for the poor, vulnerable, and displaced persons, the ministry is creating institutions that will stand the test of time. As it were, a lot of lives have been turned around for better. Internally displaced persons, senior citizens, traders, women, youth, and children have benefited from these structures being put in place by the ministry. And so, we draw the curtains on this week's episode of Service to Humanity. Don't forget to send in your questions and suggestions to any of our social media platforms or the ministry's page on Facebook or Twitter. Thank you for staying tuned. Good night.